Okay, I'm just gonna make sure I'm live. So thanks for everyone coming out. I said it already, but it's a little bad weather today. But yeah, welcome to the .NET user group. It's new year, 2025. We're changing it up a little bit, as you probably have guessed. We're going to be doing it every other month, so bi-monthly, not every twice a month, but every 2 months. It's weird that they mean the same thing, but it does.
Useless terms now because they mean the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know who decided that, but I didn't. But so every other month. So we'll have another one in April, so not March, obviously. And that one is going to be presented by another Intelitech employee, Reese, who's going to be talking on Coalesce, which is a web framework that's designed to really streamline your whole development process. But tonight we're going to be talking about EF Core. So we have a couple of matters of business before we get into the talk, but if you're here in person, please enjoy some pizza. Kenny, I see you don't have pizza. You should get some. There's still pizza left. And then there's water, coffee, candy over in the corner, and then bathrooms as well. But here we are at Intelitech, so it's sponsored by Intelitech. That's where I work, where Pat and a couple other people work. But we are, this is the building, and we are a Spokane development hub, and we're really focused on high-end software. So, we have our different links. We still use the word Twitter, because whatever. And we have a lot of other user groups as well. So if meetups are something that you are interested in, we run just the .NET, the DevOps, the Python, Rust. Then there's a couple other that we also really enjoy and support here in Spokane, but we don't specifically host. So I'm going to dive into the talk. Before that, do you guys have any questions or wants or concerns for this year at the .NET user group? Because I've been trying to figure out what is a better way to get people to come out, or what is a better way for people to be engaged and have those conversations and topics. So if you don't have any thoughts, no worries, but reach out to me if you guys ever do.
My only question would be, although it just stopped,
yes, I will. That's a good.
I don't know if that's affecting the live stream.
It is both, but that's a good call. Thank you. I don't want to do that from the beginning, but I just did that. Okay. So tonight's talk, it's titled It's All Foreign. Some a little history on me. Before Intelitech, had not used EF Core. And I had heard about it, obviously adjacent to it, used things like Dapper, which was kind of the next level where people went back to not wanting a full framework to handle their database. But the purpose of this talk was there was a lot of things that I learned from scratch in EF Core that I thought were really cool, and things that were potentially pain points that I wanted to go over. So have a little list here that we'll go over, and I have a demo app, and then I'll go through each one and see what the problem is and see how it solves it. But hopefully they're helpful for you and can be used, and if you want code snippets, I can send those as well. But first, let's go over how we got to EF Core, so brief history of the universe of data access. So we originally started before I was born here at no abstraction, you just do raw SQL, right? You connect to your database, you execute your SQL, and there you go. Then we go to later on when ADO and ODBC came out. They were saying, we'll abstract some of the things away from you, like connecting to the database, handling those connections. And then EF came out, and they really revolutionized the way you connect and use and maintain your database stuff, right? So EF, not EF Core, but Entity Framework originally, with other things as well, was a high configuration, but highly overbearing framework, right? And then later on, people came out with, well, actually those kinds of things are really performant. You take a big performance hit to have all of that nice configuration in code. So things like Dapper came out, and then Entity Framework Core, which was basically a complete rewrite of Entity Framework, came out later on. But we're going to talk about the high abstraction stuff. Low abstraction is used, but EF Core was a rewrite for more performance. So we're going to be talking about that. And then it's a brief history of the universe of EF Core this time. So EF Core originally was a rewrite in 2016 of Entity Framework, and it was rebuilt at the same time .NET Core came out, so there was a total shift in that. But people really were unhappy with the rewrite. Entity Framework 6 had a lot of features. Entity Framework Core did not. But we are making strides. We have a lot more things. NoSQL, not only SQL, is now supported in modern EF. Things like link and lazy loading have just improved the performance, and really it is a matter of configuration. But let's get into some of the problems and some of the tricks that I have kind of learned. We'll start with some of the problems that you might have. Say a client wants to display data in a column, and the dreaded phrase they always say is, can we just make it like Excel? No, don't do that. But they always want it like Excel, so that they want to be able to sort the columns, they want to be ordering. So if you do that manually, it's really clunky because you have to go through and say, well, if you want to sort by this parameter, then do an order by. Okay, now I have to get my iQueryable. Okay, do an if statement. Okay, I have my iQueryable. Let me show you. There's a different way to do it. And in EF, you can access expression builders. So expression builders allow you to, instead of directly writing it, I mean, you directly write it, but we'll show you the code, and that's not going to be. Let's see here. Okay. So if I want to order by a property name, I say, let me order by descending. That's just a nicety there. Let's see if I can't zoom in a little more. So we say, okay, I have a property name, source data, which is an iQueryable, so that's like saying, my .where, my context. Let's get my parameter, let's get my property access, and then just order by the property I want. And it's magic, and that's all it does. So then instead of having a big switch statement of saying order by this property, this is the resulting order by. You just say, I want to order by the property, and I'm going to order it descending or ascending. So we'll get into, let me shift over to the demo app. So here we have a simple meeting timer. Basically, I have created an event. They have talks. And each talk has a certain length of time, and if you go over the time, it says, you're over time, whatever it is. The basic entity is an event with a name and a date, and has talks that has a certain amount of timers, right? But really what's important is, I want to know what might, say I have a long list, I want to know what my upcoming event is by date. But if I was to do that, I would have to go and say, okay, I'll go into my repository, and then I'll say, let's see, the get all. Well, I want to do, okay, I want to order by, and then I want to order by my entity, and then I want to do by date. Oh, but now I don't really want to order by date. I want to order by the name, and so on and so forth. You have to actually write that lambda expression to say order by. But let's say instead, let me discard those, and I will check out my order by query. Give it a second to recompile. All right. Now I say, all right, now you pass me what I want. In my event params, I've just changed it to say, instead of just a search term, pass in an order by property. So I specified here that name is my default order by. But you can set it to any property name, right? So name of, or however you do it. In this case, I'm using Angular, so it's a front end thing that does it. And then you just order it by. And then you can even do a then by, because it's an I-ordered queryable. But then we get, I haven't done it as nicely as I've done it in other apps, but I've just said ascending or descending. So we'll click, so let me restart. That should work. That should. I tested, but when I did it, I did restart the app every time. So let me refresh. Okay. There we go. So now Now my name's ascending and descending, that doesn't really matter. Let's see what my upcoming event is. Okay, so my latest event is June 3rd, and then my next event is February 3rd. So now you can order by any column that you specify, and it's just all dynamic, it's built by an expression, and it just helps make visualizations a lot easier because you don't have to say, okay, on this query I want to specify, I want to order by things. You just tack on the end and make sure you pass up the right parameter. So that's kind of a cool one that I found that was, I don't want to have my formatted things, kind of a cool little data management be shown with EF Core. Then we'll move on to correlated subquery and joins. So a lot of the problems occurring from EF is how expensive and slow queries can get. Say you have a database where you have a navigation property, right? So a one-to-many of an I collection, and you say, well, I really just want to look over a single item, right? So I have a list of talks in each event, but I just want to know what's the first talk of the event. I don't know how that helps you, but maybe the name helps you. So instead of using joins, which is kind of the natural way to do it with an include, you can instead do not include the collection and instead make use of a correlated subquery. So in SQL, it's really easy to write a correlated subquery. You just say, and then like you set a property and then do a select, and then you get one. And then it's really easy. There's no joins. There's no expensive computational joins that are done by EF. So we'll look at that here. So this is the query that is resulting from EF. So EF, for some context, will take the link statements written on the left, translate them to SQL, and actually execute them against the database. So here we can break down on this right side. There's a case statement when get one thing from these talks and then go on. I don't need to join in the talks. I don't need to do anything with that. And that helps release a lot of the computationally expensive queries within EF. We can take a look at that here. I'm just going to stop that. And if you guys have any questions or want to go over it a little slower, I'm trying to get to the end because they're a little cooler at the end, but we'll start there. So here you can see, and let's inspect this data model actually. So that's the DTO, I don't want that. I want the actual event. So in this case, we have an event with an I collection of talks. What this is saying is for every one event, there is 0 to many talks. In this case, a lot of them are 1 to 2, but in the case of others, there could be upwards of 50 talks, right? Microsoft events have a lot of talks. And to be able to join in 50 entities within EF, 50 is a relative term, try 5,000 entities into EF can get really expensive. So the typical thing is if you want to look over your event, or look over your talks, you would do a .include, which 9 times out of 10 translates to a SQL join. SQL joins are obviously very efficient, but with large amounts of data, nothing could be that efficient. So let me just go back to where I was. So the crux of it is I don't include, and I still act on the collection, where I'm just saying I want to get the max one, or I want to iterate over the collection and do something with it. That results in a correlated subquery. This is applicable. We have in our project a database that for every execution of a job, it gets stored in the database. And some business processes can be executed thousands of times, millions of times maybe. And so if you want to iterate over and say, hey, when was the last time this was run, right? When was this last time business process was run? You don't want to say, okay, now go get me the whole list and then do a scan through it. You want to say, no, get me a single job execution and just get me the latest one. So we can see this in action. This is saying, okay, of all the talks, get me the first one. So A majority of them are going to say, drum roll please, introduction, welcome, agenda items, right? So these are obviously fake events and things I've configured myself for the purpose of the demo. But it does result in efficient joins, or a not joins, which is more efficient, right? So this is the debug statement. Oh, I just had it. Okay, let me go back to it. Right here at the bottom. Select when, instead of doing a join on the talks, it gets a single talk by selecting count, where from select top one, get the name. So select top one, it's going to be a really fast and efficient query.
So what if you wanted a full talk? Meaning you wanted to apply instead.
So you could do the exact same thing, because it never needs to join the, let's do that. Because that dot first is the magical property. It's not the dot name, because instead of, we can go back to this thing, select top one T0. You don't need to do dot name. All it's doing is acting over a single entity at that point, as opposed to the I collection, because it's not actually loading that into memory. You had a question in the back.
Yeah, what if you wanted to filter by order that's correlated subquery?
Super good question. So anything that is going to be correlated subquery like that can be done as long as it translates to SQL. That's always the caveat with EF. So in the case of talks, let's say, so we just make sure, hey, do we have any? That just is a nullability check and a link stuff, so we can do it. But let's say, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if it's Dan or Daniel. Yeah, let's see here. So I guess what we're looking for is like a string join. Get my talks, get my, right, it's a little more complicated. Okay, so we have a first talk, we want to join all the things, select name, oh, that's why, equals. Otherwise,
And right now you're assigning it to a string, so
yeah, so I needed to string it. No, string join. What? Is it missing that? Okay, yeah, there you go. So I have, and let's review this, because I just was trying to get the syntax in my head. Right, so I want to go through and loop through any talks that are by me, by Daniel. So I filter down my I collection, right? And I, for purposes of inertia, I did a string, but this could be a collection of talks that are by me, right? The resulting query, if I'm correct, should be when, and I'm going to select a list, right? So it's just going to be select an entity, but you're still going to, instead of joining the table, then filtering the entire set, you should filter the entire set by join them in. So we can test this. I don't know. I think Daniel's not what I said. I think I'm doing name as first and last, so it might not work. Let me. And first talk title is going to be the thing. Yeah, so I don't have any talks that are named Daniel. Let's, we can inspect the database. That's an old query. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, so Daniel Bear, sorry about that. Is that correct? Do we trust the hot reload? That's the question, though. There we go. So to your point, we want to filter down, and we're going to actually get to this similar idea of filtering a inner collection, and then so that's for later. So to your point, we want to actually get the important set of an I collection. So we can throw in a where, and let's see if I can pull off. So in this case, just when. So it looks like it did translate to a left join, but it does the case first. So a little off on what I was thinking, but first you get the select, get a case where the ID So, you know, that's just a join, talk, select count, end. Okay, so I think, so we're still doing this correlated subquery to get what we want to join to, and then we do the resulting join, right? So, little different, sorry about that. But to your point, EF allowed us to filter on the resulting set. So, super cool. Any other questions on that? Sorry, I kind of jumped around there for a little bit, but that was a good question.
Had you not joined it, would it create rows? Would it create a Cartesian source and generate new rows?
So sorry, repeat the question.
So you've string joined here to make it a one-to-one relationship between tables here, right? So
Yep.
if you had not done that, would it, I guess that's probably the underlying select statement, but would it have returned more rows than it would otherwise?
So I don't believe so because of what's going on, because of the order. So you do the case statement first, then a join. So if, say, to your point, we don't want the first talk title, we would do like a list of talks, right? A list of names for the talks that I've, and that's not gonna be that, it's gonna be first talk. Whatever, that's now gonna be like Dan's talks, something, I don't know, something like that. And then that's gonna break other things, because that's no longer, okay, Dan's talks. So I don't do a string join, I'm just literally filtering by this, and I'm gonna do a select. I probably need to do toList. No, just a null reference, because now the talk is gonna be, what am I doing here? Where, oh, speaker. Speaker name, no? Where? Does anyone see the null reference? Spot the null reference. Is it the toList? Oh, okay, da-da-da, so we would probably just want that. All right, compiler, you happy? Thank you, good spot. And we'll see the magic incantation. Well, it's not gonna show up on the front end anymore because it's now a list, so we probably get errors on the front end. But the query, let's check the query. Okay, we got first so the same thing. We have a select and then a left join. Let's just go to the database and run that exact query and see what the result set is. And
you're the wrong data, you're master.
Thank you. Okay, so the total is 6 rows. So, and we have April because I have 2 talks there. June I have 1 talk. So it looks correct to me. Does anyone else see that's wrong? Everyone happy with that result? Okay. Good questions though. Any follow up on that?
What EF will do on that, since like you see ID3 is returned twice, it'll actually, after it's returned, it will put them into a list.
Yep. Make sure the entities are not there. Yeah, good point out there on the ID3. Well, no, sorry. Actually, in this case, you're wrong because it's the ID3 of events, but actually, it's a different talk name because I have 2 talks in that event.
Yes, but you're bringing the talks into your collection, so you'll have 2 in your collection.
But it's a different talk. So it's the same event, different talks within the underlying event. So I'd have a list of events. So I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then the ID3 event would have an array of talks for the resulting. Yeah, so I think you're saying the same thing. I just misspoke there, but good call. Yes, the object graph, good call. Any follow-ups on that? Because we'll go down that line of thinking, but from a different side here in a little bit. So let me go. We're already stopped. I'm just gonna get rid of these changes. And we'll pop over to Okay. So we're gonna jump around to a different area, and then we'll come back to the idea of nested navigation properties and things like that. But we're gonna hit isolation levels. Another thing that we, the team and me specifically, found out was SQL is really good at a lot of things and has so many features. And then in EF, you just kind of need to find them. In the case of isolation levels, the thing I'm talking about is when you have a super active writing database. So maybe a logging database, right? Every 5 seconds, it logs to it and writes to it, and this table is now getting updated or inserted into constantly. I just want to go and read the data from the table, but now I have to wait in line for someone writing, right? So in this case, we're reading from a very active table, and we don't want to have the performance hits that an active table occurs. And we don't really care about the newness or the level of exactness of the read, right? I want to get the general picture of what's going on in this table. So isolation levels and changing your isolation levels is going to help this. So the idea of read uncommitted, as opposed to, I just want to read everything that's committed and finished with their transactions. No, just give me what's in the table. It's okay. I'll deal with whatever the consequences are. So EF has this. In SQL, it's super simple. But in EF, you have to kind of go around it and say, well, do my query, but do it in this scope. So in this case, we're creating a async read uncommitted scope. And let me go to the code. That snippet doesn't exactly show the picture. Isolation level extension. So here we specify an isolation level, but you can specify. Okay, you can specify any level there. EF has a couple built in, so we don't want to do read uncommitted. In this case, we do, but we want to do, chaos, read committed, read uncommitted, repeatable read, all of things, and allows us to create the scope that our query level, or that our query will actually run under. So instead of specifying a whole connection as read only or whatever it is, query level, so we can have update queries and read queries can use this read uncommitted scope in this case. So then now we've changed. This one is a hard one to demo and model because I don't have a very active database and I don't want to write a very active database. But the idea is still the same, where I select my thing and I say, to list, read committed. Makes a really nice extension method where you just call the thing and away it goes. We could show you that the same list gets returned, which I will do because I wrote it and I was happy when I got it right. Oh, no, not that one. As you can see, still get the same items. Obviously, we went back to just getting the first talk title. Now we have all the things, and if someone is updating to the table, we don't have to wait for them. We can say, whatever, just get me the events that are in the database. Any questions on that? Because we're going to kind of jump to a totally different topic. But this was an aside that actually was one of the biggest things that was a performance gain for our project. This was something that is kind of necessary in production on occasion, because we, in the theoretical world, we always have a perfect, awesome database that always has enough compute, always is going to be ready for us to read. That's obviously never going to be true. So read uncommitted and other things like that, like query hints or whatever, help us to get performant queries. So is there any thoughts or follow-ups on that? This was Pat, code I stole from Pat, so thank you, Pat. This was on our project, so. Okay. Well, now we're going to jump back into kind of the line of thinking that, sorry, what was your name? Jeff. That Jeff was going down because that is the real meat and potatoes of Entity Framework. So there's some other tricks as well that we'll talk about, but I didn't demo because they're harder to demo, just like the last one. But the dreaded message to hear from EF Core, untranslatable to SQL, because most of the time it's like, no, I know how to do it. And the answer that EF Core gives you is, well, just do a client-side to list or as enumerable, and then work through on this. Don't do that. Do not If you are having problems with Entity Framework, unless you're a small database, don't just say, yeah, the server can do that. I can handle this expensive join. Don't worry about it. I can do that. Don't do that. That's bad code. And it's hard to catch later on because all over the place with an Entity Framework and you're using LINQ, you're going to different methods. If you accidentally, as enumerable or something like that, that is a hard thing to find, right? That's a one-liner that takes your query from a really fast, efficient SQL join to now you're way overloading your memory for your server. So the problem is we need to do transformations to a column or other things that are not valid SQL but easy to do in code. So there's a lot of answers to this. I'm going to go over a couple of them. The first one is kind of an interesting use case. We'll go to that right now. So we had a production database that has the person had the great foresight to say, well, everyone's in my time zone. I'll just insert it system time. No, not how that works. But he said system time is what I want to go with. So when we then came to, let's throw a UI on top of this, and then we'll display it local time, just send it to UTC, and then because that's what we expected from the database as a snapshot in time. That was not what occurred. We started getting wonky times. We're like, oh, okay, let's figure out what we're doing here. So the answer in this case was kind of an interesting. So in the case of a select not translating correctly, we decided to go with EF. So we can jump into the code once I'm done explaining. In a select statement, we called run date time equals o.runDateTime. But then, after it translated from SQL, on client-side projections, EF just held this set and then ran the set because this line of code didn't translate to SQL and would lead to errors if you did it within the select. Because we did it in the set, it actually was smart enough to hold off execution of the set until you hit the client side, which was really cool and something that I had never heard about. So, and I looked it up and I saw just like a couple Stack Overflows, but it was pretty cool. I hadn't seen that before. So that's a small example. Do I have a branch for that? I don't know if I even did a branch for that. And I have other, no, okay. Sorry, so let me go back to it. So, demo of this because it's kind of a niche use case. But the next one, and then at the very end, I'm just going to talk about some other techniques that I've found out. But this is going to be kind of a niche use case, but still something interesting that I thought that I had found. So the other one that is more widely used, and something that is recently released, I think it was as of EF6, EF8, EF Core version 6, is using function mapping. So in SQL, we have the idea of a user-defined function, which you write and you store within the database. But in EF, it allows you to create hasDB function and use the CLR method to actually make the call. So is speaker busy uses an integer as its parameter, which then allows you to actually call it within the select statement as like, is speaker busy, passing in a speaker ID. And regardless of whether or not it's going to be translated, because you've specified it here, we actually map that to a function that's on the database side, so then the SQL is replaced. And the other thing that I thought was cool was instead of specifying a UDF, you can also specify, just run this SQL. Just give it a SQL string to actually run. And I should have both of those commits. I was on my home machine, so let's see if I have those. And I had a sneaking suspicion I didn't actually push them, but we can talk through them. Okay. Yeah, we may be out of luck here. Let's go to this one and see what's going on. Like I said, we have is speaker busy. And that gets us this db function. And I might have to run a migration really quick to see if I have it. But yeah, sorry, I'm blind when it comes to that.
Well, anyone looking over your shoulder can always find what you're
Exactly, yeah. No, that's not it.
Should be a scalar type function, right?
Yeah, and that's the seeking suspicion that I actually didn't have this. I have the migration for it. Okay, well, I did not push my latest code. That sucks. Anyways, we can just talk around it. That sucks. It was pretty cool. But if you don't know what a UDF is, go look it up. It's in SQL. But basically, all that did was say, do they have 5 or more talks under their name? And it was just a select statement and join their talks to get, is the speaker busy, quote unquote. So that is one method of the translation to SQL being fixed that way. We'll go to the event. Nope, that's not the one I want. Another thing that I had found was, and a lot in the project, is the differences between a where and a select statement. For some reason, and I think it's because of when it happens in the execution, things that are complicated in the where have much less likelihood of translating than a select statement. So what I mean by that is, we'll go back to the event repository. The reason that I've done this as a clause, or as a UDF, is because on the whereas, that is not going to translate. The query that to filter the initial list happens at the SQL level. This will not translate, but then to say at the very end, hey, is my speaker busy, but I'm not filtering by it, will happen, or is much more likely to happen because of the way it executes, because EF can do fancy magic to say, actually delay this until the very end when I'm client side, but that only occurs at the select level when you, exactly, your final select. And it's a projection, yeah, good point, Pat. So yeah, that is another thing that I like to keep in mind as tips and tricks is where or previous selects are different to EF than the final selection because of just where it happens within in the code base, right?
Yeah, because it's not big of a deal. It's, hey, I've already got my result set. Let me run this thing in code because you're not changing the number of results.
Yep.
Where if you anywhere else, you would have to return a ton of data
to make sure you get the right filtered list.
Potentially correlate it and do everything on the client side. And I believe EF by default, if you write something like that, that's an error.
Yes.
Like it used to not be. It used to be like, great, I'll just do that on the client side. I know how to do that. And they changed that and said, no, this is going to execute on the client side. Please rewrite it.
Yeah, that's where you get the error. Please do this as enumerable if you want to do this on the client side. Yep. Yeah, I ought to send code snippets out because I did have other things, but I didn't push them, so I'm slightly frustrated. But is there any other follow-up thoughts on that line of thinking of the user-defined function, or where a select or where a select statement happens, or different executions?
Have you tried the performance of the UDF approach? Because if I recall, at least previously, UDFs or user-defined functions didn't perform well in SQL, at least.
Sure. So yeah, there is some interesting things because at scale, UDFs do fail. That's not, yeah.
Well, so in the where clause, it has to execute it to find if it even applies.
Which is where it runs once per row, but in the select, right, doesn't it?
So the select, it'll see once per row, but after it's by
Okay.
So the difference would be, if I want 50 items because I'm doing paging, it still has to run 50 times, so it's per row. But a UDF on the where clause before the skip take has to happen n number of times for n number of rows, right? So the problem with UDF still exists for this SQL replacement, right? you can't just because it translates to SQL doesn't mean it's efficient code, right? That's an important thing to keep in mind. And I'm a code first person, so I always look at, oh, the link makes sense to me. I've written it, it now translates. Done. That is the end all be all, right? Pat and Brian, my team member, that's not actually doesn't mean it's performing, right? And at a certain scale, it's not going to work because it's just going to time out. So.
Yeah, and it's not specific to UDFC, basically.
100%.
If you just do string concatenation, anything that the database doesn't know explicitly that it has indexed, and it's going to have to go calculate what it is in order to compare.
Well, there are some interesting things that actually, along the lines of string, that I actually found out today that are not even in the talk. I'd like to share right now. As of EF Core 8, they started to implement the use of JSON. That is a new function within SQL that's not supported like 2016 and before, but basically allows you to do a lot of those things as a much more efficient query, right? So because it's exactly, it's a little bit of NoSQL, right? So the example that I was presenting, we wanted to select a list where it contained within a different list. And then we were like, what's the limit of that? How big is the access list, right? The one that your contains on. What's the limit to where it's not performing? And so my coworker said, we'll just do all of them. Just do all 3,000 items. Is it contained in this list of 3,000 items? And then we looked at the resulting SQL, and it was actually doing a string find within the open JSON of that list. So it wasn't taking a list, doing a where clause or a contains or an in, like it would previously do, but it was actually saying, is my string, my whole string, but actually a column value, found in this bigger string? And it's really performant, blazing fast. So that is an interesting thing, and it's a little bit of fake NoSQL. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll listen on it, but see if these speakers are affected by the things. So it might be that affected by different things. Oh, but it might be the speakers as opposed to the actual mic. So, but I'll. Thank you. Let me just make a note of that really quick. Yes, I use Notepad.
I use Notepad all the time.
Yeah.
It opens faster than any other program.
Okay. Well, cool. Let me go back to the presentation. I think those are all the things that I wanted to cover and things that I had pointed out. Like I said, I lost some of the code samples that I was doing. Definitely not last night, but as my last of commit. But is there any other thoughts? If not, we can break and appreciate your guys' time.
Do you know? So I know, especially like you were talking about the history, because I mean I think it was EF Core 3 before it would translate like group bys in SQL before it was doing on the client side. In the later ones, like 6, 7, 8, any notable ones that you're aware of where, hey, we got this, it finally does this in SQL?
Go ahead, Pat.
Bulk updates.
Yep.
Were a wonderful thing that came out in 7.
So does it natively, because
Yes.
there was,
There's a library.
yeah, there's a library that I've used.
Well, there was, yeah, but there's a library. It's just built in.
It's baked in now. Yeah.
As of .NET 7.
Is there anything special you have to do for that, or is it just
I don't remember the syntax. You can look it up.
Let's look it up.
Pretty straightforward. Just bulk updates in the F4. And the interpolated, from interpolated SQL and formatted strings for protecting against SQL injection hack. In a nice syntax that's just a interpolated string. Those are nice.
does it do bulk inserts as well?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what we got. We actually got it where you can, like in SQL, you can say, update this column where we did this.
Yeah, or delete.
And that's what we got
values.
for you.
Yeah.
So where before,
That's
any
the one
framework
we
is,
used to do right there. That link above you clicked on is the library I've been using.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yep. The bulk extensions.
The one below that.
Oh, bulk core. EF core bulk
so
insert.
what we're talking about isn't really like,
Okay.
like the bulk insert. But before, if you wanted to, hey, I've got 10,000 rows with this value, go find me those and update them. It would return 10,000 rows,
You just have
set the
to
properties, and then run 10,000 update statements.
It would create 10,000 update statements.
Now it'll do what SQL normally does and say,
Where?
do an update set where, and it'll do them in a single statement without having to.
That's great.
And
There's also another extension library, I don't remember what it is, where there's some specific stuff like, hey, I know SQL could do this, but it doesn't know how to translate. So like if you want an actual like, you can say in your expression, you can say dot like, and it will force it to use the SQL. It might be.
Predicate building?
I think he's in Fireswamp. And then besides that, I don't have any other specific ones that come to mind, but that doesn't mean they don't exist.
I think the other important thing to do is, if you have a really complicated thing, don't spin your wheels trying to get Entity Framework to do it for you. It is okay once in a while to write a manual query and execute.
The last thing I was going to say before we broke was the problem with having an awesome plane that flies is sometimes you need to know when to jump off the plane. And sometimes EF is awesome, but Kevin Bost, obviously, he says sometimes the best performance gain you can have from EF is don't use EF. So that's a thing to keep in mind. There still is the option to run manual SQL. So, well, cool. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate your time. Please take some pizza before you go, and we'll see you guys in 2 months. Thanks.